What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the Dingo Talk Alumni Tour. My guest this week is Mitch Barnes, class of 1987. Mitch is going to tell us everything about how he ended up here, his time at Bethany, Greek organizations and such, and what he's doing now. But without further ado, Mitch Barnes.
You wanna know by now. You wanna know by now. You wanna know by now. You wanna know. You wanna know. You want.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the Dingo Talk Alumni Tour. My guest this week is Mitch Barnes, class of 1987. Mitch, thank you very much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate the invite. Got to represent.
We are going to talk about everything from how Mitch found his way to this little corner of the northern panhandle of West Virginia, his time here, and then what he did outside of graduating from Bethany and coming back and representing Bethany always. So, Mitch, how did you end up here at Bethany?
Okay. Well, I grew up in Central Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, and first sort of Bethany because I grew up in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. So I knew about Bethany and Thomas Campbell, and started to realize, there were lots of other disciple schools. I found out about Hiram College and Eureka College and whatnot. And so when I was around a sophomore in high school, I realized that, hey, if I fill out some of these, college cards and send them out, they'll send me stuff. So I kind of liked getting something in the mail every day. So I started filling out cards, and I filled one out for Bethany and started reading up about it. And I realized that a number of news reporters and news anchors who had come through the Columbus area were Bethany graduates. And so, for instance, Bill Wolfson, who graduated sometime in the 70s, was a Bethany grad. And Faith Daniels, who she came through Columbus and went to Pittsburgh and eventually was on CBS for a while. Her husband, Dean Daniels, kind of did the same path. Bob Orr also spent time in Columbus, Ohio as a news reporter. So finding out that, a lot of these news anchors who had come through Columbus were Bethany grads, I was already interested in possibly being a communications major. So I'm like, wow, this little school has produced these kinds of people, and it's only 2.5 hours away. Well, that's sort of the best of both worlds. So I started looking very seriously at Bethany then. And ended up being recruited by Dave Waddle, who was an Olympian, and ironically, he was the roommate at Bowling Green of one of my best friends from high school. And so one of my best friends, his older brother, had been Waddle's roommate in college.
So there was already a connection there.
Yeah, exactly. And so so by my senior year, Bethany was on rolling admit. So basically, I applied to Bethany in late September, found out by around Halloween of my senior year, and that was the only school I applied to. And I'm like, okay, now I just gotta fund it. And so applied for a number of scholarships, and because of my involvement in youth group through the Disciples of Christ, I ended up earning the Campbell Scholarship. And so, without that, I wouldn't have been able to pay for Bethany, but earned that and worked 2 jobs every summer to help pay for school. And so August 22nd, 1983, bam, I end up in Bethany, West Virginia, which was the beginning of a very interesting journey.
So let's dive into that journey. Let's go academics first. What was was there a change? Were you already academically very how I'm gonna be?
Being there on scholarship is like, well, okay, you've got to come up with the grades. I went to St. Charles Preparatory School in Columbus, Ohio. So I really had to, bust my butt to keep a 3-point there. And so, coming to Bethany, and having the pressure of you're on scholarship, you can't screw up. once I got into classes and whatnot, I was like, okay, I really felt like St. Charles really prepared me for the next step, which was college. I remember, you get midterms and then you get your semester grade. Well, at midterms, I had a 2.9 at midterms. So I'm like, okay, I'm only a tenth of a point off. No problem. I know what I got to do to get these grades up. Okay, I felt good about it. Probably a couple days later, 5 o'clock in the morning, my phone is ringing off the hook in Moreland, and I pick it up, and it's my parents. They got my midterms, and they're freaking out. You're gonna lose your scholarship. You know, yeah. And I'm like, Mom, it's halfway through the race. I know what I'm doing. It's okay. And so
this is a good place for me to be right now.
I'm only a tenth of a point off where I need to be. It's going to be okay. And they were threatening to drive up and pull me out of school. And I said, let me finish the next 2 laps. I made Dean's List first semester. Yeah. And second semester. So, so I was like, Mom, let me do, I know what I'm doing. This is why I'm in college, kind of thing. So once they got past that paranoia, that was good. But yeah, it was, at times Bethany pushed, I remember taking some classes. I'm like, I don't know about this. But overall, academically, I'm still a big proponent of liberal arts education. I've had many different jobs and have switched different careers, and I really don't think I would have been able to successfully make the jumps that I have made without having a broad educational experience. And the days of graduating from college in a major and getting a job and having that job for 30 years and you retire, that was starting to end. That was starting, the beginning of the end of that was starting in 1987, 1988, and definitely by the 90s, it was, that was definitely changing for a lot of people. And so, those days are definitely gone. So I think having an education where you have a focus in a certain area, but you have experience and knowledge in other areas as well, because you just never know. I was communications, radio, and TV major, and I remember someone telling me halfway through my junior year that I should go into teaching. I'm like, I'm not going to be a teacher. So I'm going to be the next Ed Bradley. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a news anchor, and lo and behold, here you are. I'm finishing my 29th year, as a faculty member at the Culver Academy. So, and to tell you the truth, I wouldn't change that. I love what I do, but
you came in as a communications major, and had that the same experience that most do. You come out, and it's a very tough degree to then apply if you're going into the radio, TV field where like you wanted to be. That's a tough field to get into.
Yeah, it can be. And if you're willing to make certain sacrifices, you can get in and possibly stay in as well. Like for instance, if I if I were like definitely single and really had no attachments when I graduated from college, I probably would have stayed at TV7 News where I started out and would have done the grind to possibly jump to Pittsburgh or jump to Columbus, Ohio. But because of certain circumstances, I graduated from Bethany May of '87, got engaged May of '88, June of '87, got married May of '88, and the planets were almost perfectly lined up for me to start at the ABC affiliate in Columbus, Ohio, my hometown. But with a lot of different things happening, it was like they're like, we need you to hold out 2 months. I'm like, I can't hold out 2 months.
No.
So so if I'd been wanting to stay in Newark, Ohio, and DJ at a daytime AM country western station full time, and I did do that for a while. Floyd Rogers, real 790 WHTH. But there were just certain things I just wasn't in a position to do. But it all worked. It all worked out. I found out that that I liked working with students, And so my venture into being the YMCA Black Achievers Program director for Metropolitan Columbus YMCA was a great experience, and that led me to doing college admissions at Denison University for a few years. And I could definitely, sell Denison, because basically it was just a bigger version of Bethany. And so it's like, there are definite pluses to going to a school like this. And through Denison, that led me to the Culver Academies, because I used to recruit at Culver for Denison. And so when I was looking to get off the road, I took a look at Culver, and 29 years later, still here.
So social life at Bethany, you decide you go Greek, you're an Alpha Sig.
Yeah.
And was Greek life something that was on your radar when you got to Bethany, or just
no, it was
what the environment was?
Yeah, it was not on my radar. I wasn't looking to be anti-Greek. I wasn't looking to definitely go Greek. My only exposure to Greek life was Animal House, which I grew up on, late 70s, early 80s. But I enjoyed this. I mean, as a freshman, I loved the social life of Bethany. Because you were sort of an interesting resource. A lot of the sorority girls would check you out because you're new freshman. A lot of the guys would check you out because they're trying to recruit you. Even though the drinking age had just moved from 18 to 19, as I came in as a freshman, a lot of us were grandfathered in, and then the rest of us just kind of fell through the cracks a lot. So going to Bubba's was a great time. And I remember our first meeting with our RA, and he was saying, look, this is the first year that kegs are not allowed in the dorm. So please don't have a keg in the dorm, because you'll get in trouble. And, you can have as much beer in your room as you want, but it just can't be in a keg. And so I'm stupid. I'm like, so technically we could have like 20 cases of beer in our room, but as long as it's not a keg, we're okay. It's like, well, no. Someone will talk to you if you have 20 cases of beer in your room, but technically by law, yeah, that's what it means. So probably 2 weeks later, a bunch of us were throwing a party. We had 25 cases of beer in the room just to make a point. Bethany, I definitely learned the work hard, play hard mentality at Bethany, where I didn't stay in my room and study 24/7, but I also wasn't blowing off class and really screwing around. I mean, there were times where I could go out because I didn't have much work to do. There were times I'd have to say, hey guys, I'll catch you and beat the clock around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. I got to get this done. Or there were times where I'm like, guys, I can't go out. I got to get this project finished. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but yeah, there were times I remember being asked sometimes, how do you get good grades? I'm like, well, Duncan, I actually go to class. You don't. There's a correlation there. Not sure if you know it, but there's a correlation there. So yeah, love the social life as a freshman, and looking at the houses, I felt the most comfortable at Alpha Sig. Yeah.
And then that experience, because you're living up at Point Breeze.
Yeah.
So what is that experience like?
It was great. You were living basically in a large old house with a bunch of guys. And the mansion itself had its nice allure. When the staircase had all the spindles in it, but when you have 40, 50 guys living in an old house, there's going to be natural attrition,
wear and tear,
and unfortunately there was unnatural wear and tear as well. But I mean, I knew eventually that that house is going to get condemned eventually. And when it was, there was a lot of, this is so terrible. And I was like, guys, come on. You've got to admit, some of you guys standing in this room right now are responsible for this. Okay. Come on. When there's like one spindle left in the whole staircase, come on, that's not just things falling apart. That's people being stupid. And if you're going to be but okay, fine, but pay the fine and pay to get it replaced, but, I mean, to a certain extent, over the years, we've done it to ourselves. We got to be willing to admit that. So, but yeah, it was great living in a house. I mean, yeah, it was sort of a hassle, kind of, if you didn't have a car, having to walk in.
That's a hike.
Say again?
That's a hike.
It's a hike. Yeah, especially at 2 a.m. when you're coming back from Bubba's. But yeah,
listen, it was a hike for us to walk halfway to Greek. I mean, we were only halfway of what you guys were walking. And I promise you, there might have been an hour between leaving Bubba's and an arrival time, because give or take 15 minutes.
Yeah, you had more hills. You had more hills in your walk. Yeah, but living in a large room, not like a dorm room, and sometimes being able to have a single, or in my case being able to have my own bathroom and shower my senior year. I was like, this is definitely what I want. And plus the one thing about Bethany, it was small enough where all the cool people hung out together anyway. So it really didn't matter whether you were an Alpha
affiliation didn't matter. It was
yeah. I mean, I still had good friends that were independents, or I had friends who were betas. I had friends who were Sigma News, and I just had to stay away from the betas I didn't like, that kind of thing. So
the normal Bethany bubble.
Yeah. And the one thing I personally benefited from was second semester rush. Because by the time you're coming back from Christmas break, you pretty much knew, one, if you were going to go Greek, and if so, where you were going to go.
There wasn't it might be between one or two houses, but it's I'm going to go Greek, not the other way.
Exactly. Because I mean, by the beginning of second semester, you've seen all the houses, at their best, at their worst, at their middle, and they've seen you at your best, at your worst, at your middle. So, I think that was much more beneficial, because by then I knew what I was getting into. I knew where I felt comfortable and where I didn't, versus, first semester and people kind of put on, their happy face for 2 weeks, and then you find out how they really are. Sometimes that that kind of bait and switch can be very negative. By the time I was back in late January, I pretty much knew where I didn't want to go and where I did want to go.
And Greek life is something that you would say still to this day is something that keeps the retention high and whatnot here, because you have the people. From what I see, when I'm back at homecoming or whenever I'm coming through, I definitely try to go up and see what's going on with at the house with the current brothers, and find out, hey, what's going on campus these days. Try to get a feel. But I mean, given the fact that people are still going that are still going Greek, and seeing that, I mean, I think that's a good part of Bethany, and the fact that, again, the lines aren't so rigid. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. If I'd gone to Ohio State, I probably wouldn't have gone Greek, because you're looking at a totally different kind of system and atmosphere versus a different atmosphere, in the Appalachians. So, Well, that's a good spot for us to take a pause on. We're gonna take a break. Send it to KJ Kieran Dunn from Maple Shades Outdoors. You can follow him on Instagram, maple_shade.outdoors, or you can like and subscribe after watching this video, and then pop over to his YouTube channel. It's Maple Shade Outdoors. Everything you need to know, gaming, hunting, fishing, that's what they do, and they do a good job at it. So KJ, go ahead and take it away.
What's going on, everybody? This is Kieran Dunn, founder of Maple Shade Outdoors. You're currently watching Dingo Talk with my man Carlo. If you're anything like me and you're really enjoying this content, you should like and subscribe his page. While you're on YouTube, you should probably just head over and like and subscribe Maple Shade Outdoors. Check out our page, enjoy some videos, some outdoor content. You might as well hop on Instagram, Facebook, follow us, Maple Shade Outdoors. Now that's enough about me. I'm trying to get back and watch the rest of Dingo Talk, so I'll talk to y'all later.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the Dingo Talk Alumni Tour. My guest this week is Mitch Barnes, class of 1987. We left off with everything, Bethany. You said you wanted to pick something up when we came out of this segment before we get into comps and the rest of what was that?
Well, as far as the social part, my friend, most of my friends that I graduate with noticed, but second day of freshman year of college, I ended up meeting a girl named Corey Henneman, and we ended up being Bethany sweethearts, and to this day are still married.
So you go through comps with your significant other.
Yeah, she did it in January. I did it in May. So I'm like, I can't screw up because I don't want to come back.
So how was comps? The week of studying, because you were already kind of in that mentality of where you had to be. And then how did comps go? Obviously, you passed them.
Once you get past the head trip, if I don't pass, if I fail, I don't graduate. Yeah, and once you get past the, oh my God, I'm being tested over everything in my major. Once you get past that, it's like, well, wait a minute. I mean, I've got a pretty good GPA. I had to learn something, And then once you start looking at it that way, then it's like, okay, And so, I mean, it's definitely not a cakewalk, but it's not insurmountable. And so, but getting past that head trip can be difficult. It can be difficult. Because I'd known a number of people who didn't pass the first time. Independent, like for instance, when we were there, econ, it was very tough to pass. And my freshman sophomore year, there were some, I knew like 5 different people that were on like the 7-year plan, and 4 of them were in econ. They just couldn't pass. They just couldn't get through the comps. So seeing that freshman year and sophomore year and junior year, now it's your turn. You can end up kind of psyching yourself out of it and freaking out. Because I remember some people, when I was an underclassman, they're prepping for comps and they're freaking. And so when you're in that position, you're just like, oh my God, I don't want to freak.
Do enough? Did I study enough?
Fail either? Yeah, but it was very interesting. Going into orals. I mean, going into orals. I don't know if the formula is still the same, but I think you had to have a minimum of 700 points to pass. So you had to have at least the C. So going into my orals, I had like 619 points. And I don't know how much the orals were worth, but I'm like, I'm that close to 700. Okay. So, I mean, I was like, okay, you can do this. I'm going into orals. It's up to me. It's not like my fate's in someone else's hands. But I did like the fact that they had people from your department and you're allowed to bring in someone from outside your department. Mm-hmm. Because I had David Judy, and he was a Bethany legend when he was there, and after he passed, and he was like a second father to me. I mean, he was that close of a mentor to me. I had him in freshman seminar, and even though it was a comm major, I kept him as my academic advisor until the chair of the communications department basically threatened me and said, you have to switch. I'm like, why? He's got my best interests at heart. He knows what I want to do with communications and how I'm wrapping theater into it. He says, I know that, but you have to have one. I'm like, fine. So Dr. Judy was in there, and this is back in the day when, like Jim Carty, big communications giant. And for some reason, he starts asking me all this international communication stuff that was nowhere close to being on the review guide. And I'm like, why are you doing this to me in my orals? And so I'm trying to battle back on him, just kind of trying to give answers. And I'm sitting there like, why is he doing this? And then, Jones, that was Dr. Judy's nickname, because Jones was his middle name. And so Jones just started firing some questions at me about, the mixing of media and where, and so he was throwing stuff that I could just talk about. And so he threw me some softballs where I could battle back and at least break even. And then from there, from there it went. From there I was like, okay, I got this. But yeah, it's an interesting experience. I mean, I think Bethany is still one of, I think, only 4 schools that still does comps. My son-in-law is the Wabash grad, and he had Wabash, one of the other schools that still has comprehensive exams. So yeah, I shared with him some old battle stories about comprehensive exams, and yeah, the celebration afterwards. Well, yeah, you know what happens there.
Was a great time. It was a great time.
Yeah.
Well, and then
a great time not to remember.
A month after passing comps, you're engaged. You graduated. You're engaged.
Yeah.
You get married the following year.
Yeah. We got married May of '88.
And then, so where does the careers go?
Yeah. We ended up settling back in Columbus, Ohio at first. I got to graduation. And so, we're both working in Columbus. That's when, after grad, I worked at TV7 News for a while. And, it's 1987 and I'm looking to get married. But I'm like, I don't know if I want to live in Wheeling, West Virginia. Wheeling, West Virginia, 1987, being interracially married, I'm like, that's not a good recipe.
Sound good.
Yeah. So, that was a definite consideration. And so by the time we got married, I was already director of the YMCA Black Achievers Program in downtown Columbus. Corey's doing her thing. We end up moving to Newark, Ohio. And we're both in our careers in Newark. And by night, that's like May of '88, after we got married. By '89, I'm at Denison University, which is right next door to Newark, Ohio. And Corey was working full time, and then had Katie, the first of 3 kids. And Corey decided to go back to get her teaching certificate because she found out I want to teach, and so that's how she wanted to use her major. She was a French major. And so she was working on her teacher certification. I'm doing college admissions. And I'm looking to get off the road because, leaving on Sunday or Monday, getting back Thursday or Friday night, doing laundry Saturday, Sunday, getting back on the road. I'm like, that's no way to raise a kid. So when I was looking to get off the road, I had already been recruited for 3 years by the dean of faculty here at Culver. He was a Denison grad, and he always made sure I had plenty of kids, to talk to when I would go recruit at Culver. And so he would, he worked on me for 3 years. It's like, we're looking for young faculty members like you, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm a city boy. Culver's really in the middle of nowhere. And I've done the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you middle.
I've been there, done that. I said, I'm interracially married and I know my Indiana history. I don't know, man. But I was looking to get off the road, and Culver's, Culver, Indiana is not your typical Indiana small town because, you've got this college prep high school and it brings all kinds of people to it. So we took a look at it, and I interviewed for a job, and they interviewed Corey for a job. So we moved to the cornfields of Indiana in 1992. And so, I've worn a number of different hats. Here at Culver, I was a counselor for one of the living units for 4 years. Also was a college advisor here for 8 years. Had at least 1 foot in the academic side, teaching at least 1 class from the time I got here. Joined the English department at halftime, was teaching speech, public speaking, was using my communications major as coach of the speech team. And 25 years later, the speech program is very strong. We just won. If you told me we were going to win a state championship in the age of COVID, I would have said you're crazy, but we ended up winning our 5th state championship this year. I really honor my education as far as theater, doing theater, not only in high school, but particularly at Bethany. under the tutelage of David Judy, because as soon as I took over the speech team and realized, okay, a lot of this is like competitive theater, I started calling on all of my experiences from Wales theater at first. And so, so that really gave me a leg up as far as entering the weird and unique world of competitive speech. I've been here at Culver since 1992. I teach in the humanities department. Corey's in the language department. She was the director of academic advising for a long time here. And then she's now in her 6th year, I think, as department chair of the language department. So she's definitely put her Bethany degree in French to good use as chair of the modern languages department. And she's also one of my, I think this is the conclusion of her 5th year as being one of my assistant coaches on the speech team. So we're putting her Bethany experience in Wales theater to good use as well. We did a number of shows together at Bethany. So
so to wrap everything up, my question is, why Bethany? If you were going to pitch Bethany to someone, a parent or a prospective student, why this part of the Northern Panhandle?
Yeah, I would say because you're going to get a quality education. You're going to get an education of not only depth but breadth, where it will allow you to reinvent yourself if and when you have to. I think the relationships that you can form at Bethany, where it's a small school, sometimes you might feel way too many people know your business, but everybody knows your name. And there's something to be said for that one-on-one contact and interaction with your professors. I mean, there were so many professors that really had a direct impact on my life, and being able to have that relationship with them when they're here. I mean, when you're there as a student and afterwards, for instance, I didn't get along with Tony Mitch very well when I was an undergrad, because I don't know if they still have the WQT or not, but that was a big sticking point for me in the English department. But he ended up becoming a real good friend of mine because he was mutual friends with Gary Capel, and I was friends with Gary Capel before I even took a class from him. I didn't take a class from him until last semester, my senior year, but because he did theater tech and I acted on stage and did tech and other stuff. Here's a professor who he's my friend before I even take a class from him. A lot of times that gets lost at a larger school, and I teach at a very small college prep high school, 835 students, and that's and when we were there, I think Bethany was around 850 at the time. So but students here are like this place is too small, blah blah blah, and I'm like, well, I say imagine Culver, Indiana, with no lake. We have the 2nd largest natural lake in the state of Indiana. One restaurant, there's like 13 in Culver. And it's in a mountainous area. There's no gas station and there's one bar. So that's in the middle of nowhere. But we had during that time, because of a great student activities department, we had entertainment all the time. I remember seeing and meeting Dizzy Gillespie, the Michael Stanley Band. Who was that guy? He did the Budweiser commercials for a long time. Kind of did like 1930s stuff. But Lionel Hampton, Three Dog Night, Spyro Gyra. The Ramones played here. The producers played here.
Did that influence? Because I know I jumped the gun a little bit for this question, but did that influence the fact that you're in a band currently and you were in bands here? You caught the bug.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, between my natural love of music and DJing at WVBC almost every day during my 4 years there, the first concert I ever saw as age 5 was the Jackson 5 and the Commodores. The following year I saw Grand Funk Railroad. So I've been going to concert. I mean, I've been listening to music or watching music, and for a long time, and kind of taught myself during high school how to play drums, and so I remember I was air drumming to "Let's Go" by the Cars in somebody's room in Moreland. They're like, "You play drums?" I'm like, "Well, kinda. I mean, I don't have my own kit or anything." And they're like, "Well, our drummer just broke his arm. Do you mind sitting in for him?" I'm like, "What kind of stuff are you guys doing?" And they show me their playlist. I'm like, "Okay." I mean, I've never played this stuff before, but yeah, I'm willing to, and next thing you know, playing in a band called Violent Octopus, playing another band called Sweet Baloney, so, and so that love of music just carried over into, here at Culver, realized that there were a bunch of faculty members, a lot of them are really good musicians. And we started talking, and there was a battle of the bands. And so we formed a faculty band. We call ourselves Grumpy Old Men. And we put together a 7-song set, and all the other bands punked out because they couldn't get it together. So we're like, well, we got 7 songs to play, and we'll do a mini show. And so we played in front of the whole student body, and they just loved it. So we started doing a show on an annual basis. But then faculty members retire, people move on, and if you lose a bass player, it's hard to play without a bass. And so I was hanging out with the guitarist, who at the time was a professor at Notre Dame, and I was like, "Hey, this MTV Unplugged stuff is pretty big right now. Let's strip it down. Maybe just do a duo or something." So he and I formed this duo called Freudian Slip, and we actually started playing out starting in 2000. And so I started booking gigs and doing this and doing that and traveling to different places in northern Indiana. And then that went for a long time, and then ended up falling in with some other musicians. And so, currently been with Acoustically Speaking since 2008. And we all have day jobs, so we're not looking to be on MTV or Fuse anytime in the near future.
Just enjoying being.
Yeah, it's just great to play and to get paid doing it, and people like what you're doing, and so it's good therapy after a rough week at school.
I bet that's a great way to just let everything go.
Oh yeah, but yeah, there are a lot of good things for to be said for a small liberal arts school. We're going to get lots of one-on-one attention, and that's what I definitely benefited from during my 4 years at Bethany.
Well, Mitch, I want to say thank you very much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for the invite.
And we got to send it to the other staple of Bethany College, well, the town of Bethany. Chambers General Store, Harry Chambers is going to take it away, because if Chambers doesn't have it, you don't need it. It's just a fact. It's also a fact, if you've ever been to Bethany and never went to Chambers, you never came to Bethany.
Love their sandwiches.
But
and they're still cheap.
Without further ado, Harry Chambers, take it away.
You've just watched another exciting episode of Dingo Talk, recorded in the secret lair deep in the hills of Bethany, West Virginia. Let me give a shout out to my man Don over at Maple Shade Outdoor. He's got some great stuff going on over there on YouTube and Instagram. Please make sure you check him out. Also, now available as promised, we have the second edition Bethany, West Virginia Mushroom Capital of the World t-shirts and our Chambers General Store. If we don't have it, you don't need it t-shirts. Available in all sizes. So make sure you stop by the store for a t-shirt, breakfast sandwich, or sausage biscuits and gravy, and make sure to check out those daily lunch specials. Now back to you, Dingo.